All right, so today we're going to do a measure around a unit circle or around a circle called radians. Now maybe you have seen the word radian before. In your calculator, it's on the mode button. If you hit the mode button, and we don't need calculator today, but I'm telling you one place that you might see this is on your calculator. You have a choice on your calculator of degrees or radians. Your calculator defaults, that means when you turn it on, you haven't changed it, the factory defaults on your calculator, are a unit of measure called radians. So you'd find that if you wanted to hit the mode button on your calculator. So let's go back and think about what we've done with the unit circle. We said we had 0 degrees here, 90 degrees, 180 degrees. What's the one on the bottom here at 0, -1? 270. Then we come back up to 360. So we have 360 degrees rolling around a circle. So you can divide that circle up into 360 equal little parts. Well, why are we dividing it into 360 parts? Why not 10? Why not 1,000? Why 360? Anybody know? That's what? Say again? That's the entire circle. But why did we decide that there were 360 little divisions around the circle? Because when you spin around in your car, it's called a 360. Okay, so there we have it. That's the whole reason that we've split the circle into 360 little degrees. Well, I would basically say it's arbitrary. We could have split the circle into 10 parts and gone 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10. Why not? The reason they picked 360 because it has a bunch of factors. This is why they picked 360. Well, those are degrees. We're going to divide the circle into pieces called radians instead of degrees. And there are not going to be 360 of them around the circle. The number of radians there are going to be around the circle is going to be the circumference of this circle. Now this is a unit circle. What is its circumference? 2 pi. Circumference is 2 pi r, and our radius is 1, so the circumference of this circle is 2 pi. And I'm going to, instead of having 360 little tick marks around this circle, I'm going to have 2 pi little tick marks around this circle. Don't look at me that way. Okay, so the circle again is going to start at 0. And when I get all the way around, I'm going to get to 2 pi. So if I only got halfway around, how far do you think I've gone? Pi. Oops, not pi over 2. Pi. 2 pi divided by 2 is just pi. Okay. If I've gone 1/4 of the way around the circle, half a pi. So we write that as pi over 2. And if I've gotten 3/4 of the way around the circle, what do you think? 1.5 pi. So 1.5 we're going to keep as a fraction of 3/2. So we're going to call this 3/2 pi, but we'll call it 3 times pi over 2. So let's figure out some equalities here. 0 degrees is going to be the same thing as 0 radians. 90 degrees is going to be how many radians? 90 degrees right here. How many radians is that? Pi over 2. Here's 180 degrees. And how many radians are we going to call that? And 270 degrees here at the bottom of our circle is the same thing as 1.5 pi, or 3 pi over 2. Getting all the way back around to 360 degrees being the same thing as 2 pi. And we can start rolling around forwards and backwards just like we did before with degrees. We can do the same thing with radians. Okay, so there's a couple of ways I can go from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. I can use a little formula, or I can memorize things around the unit circle. I think we'll use a little formula first. So let's say I had something that wasn't on one of these axes. Let's say I had 300 degrees. And I want to know how many radians that is. Okay. Well, I'm going to use one of these equivalences that I see up here in my list. 0, 0 isn't going to help. I can use 90 and pi over 2, 180 and pi, 270 and 3 pi over 2, 360 and 2 pi. I like using the 180 and pi. So, there are 180 degrees are the same thing as pi radians. So 300 degrees is the same thing as, I don't know, radians. Let me cross multiply. 180 times r equals 300 times pi. Divide both sides of this equation by 180. And my number of radians is 300 pi over 180, but you better simplify that fraction for me. So can anybody simplify 300 divided by 180? No. Okay. I could use any of these that I have except for the 0, 0 won't really help me. So I use the 180 pi. Sometimes I use the 362 pi. I don't like the ones with the fractions, but you can certainly use any of these equivalences up here to figure out your radians in 300 degrees. Okay, to simplify the fraction 300 over 120, so the zeros will cancel, and I get 30 over 18. What number will go into both 30 and 18? 6. Divide 30 by 6 and get 5. Divide 18 by 6 and get 3. So 300 degrees is 5 pi over 3 radians. Yeah. Up to where? Right there? Didn't think you were going to need these, and now you think, oh, well, maybe I'm going to need these. I'll do them several times today. All right. Now, if I wanted to go from radians to degrees, let's say we had negative pi over 4 radians, and I want to change that to degrees. Well, all